Welcome everybody back to Dudes Views. It's been a while. We're just not even going to talk about why we didn't do it. The honest answer was we just got lazy. We could make up a bunch of excuses, but it just got easier not to do it. But we're back and we're talking about the Consumer Stress Legal Index or CSLI. You've heard us talk about this before. Matt's the author of it. This data comes from the organization we work in, and it's actually, if you've not looked at it, it's super eye-opening, um, and it really lets you kind of see what's behind the ticker at the bottom of CNN, MSNBC, all of that that says buying's up. America's doing great. And you look and it's like, well, doesn't feel like America's doing great because the pennies are getting pinched and now they're going to stop making pennies. And so, Matt, I don't know
Not
if you want to
even
give,
not even any pennies to pinch. We're
yeah,
pinching nickels and quarters now, right?
they're making us pinch the silver stuff now. But I don't know if you want to just kind of just to remind everybody what the CSLI is and kind of where it came from, and then get into, this month you kind of got some positives and negatives, but they all kind of say the same thing at the end of the day.
Sure, and that's really why we published this index, because we really think it's a real time right now pulse of the United States consumer, because what this index is built on is to the tune of almost 150,000 individual requests for legal service per month. We're able to track the high level subject matters of those requests, again, on a daily basis, 150,000 times a month. And again, I like to joke, folks don't call a lawyer for a good time. They call because they've got a problem. And that's really what we're counting here, is the real-time legal inquiries each month. And in June, for the Q2 report that we just put out, the stress index is up for I think the fourth consecutive month now, and it's the highest level of consumer financial stress we've seen since November 2020. And again, I like to also remind everyone that what we're looking at here is what I call hard data versus soft data. Again, we're counting the number of times people with a problem are calling a lawyer for help. These inquiries aren't sentiment, they're not emotions, they're not responses to surveys. They're, concrete actions taken by Americans, just like me and you, every single day, who are dealing with legal issues stemming from some type of issue relating to financial stress.
Yeah, and a lot of the key takeaways you have in this is the overall stress index within the bankruptcy, foreclosure, consumer finance, housing, construction, and then housing sales. And I've always liked how we differentiate construction from sales, because you have the pre-existing market and then the new to be built market, which are two different areas. But bankruptcy, which shows down 5.6%, but up 8.8 year over year. So even though it ticked down a month, it's still up over 8.8. Explain a little bit why bankruptcy is a key indicator of like why stress is coming. Like people can't pay their bills. They're
Sure,
talking
yeah,
about a
and
big
and
decision.
we like to say, again, that's another reason why all of these indexes have been found to be leading indicators of the information, the piece of data that they're tracking. And bankruptcy is no different, right? I mean, people don't wake up in the morning and declare bankruptcy or start thinking about bankruptcy, right? It's kind of the end game. I've been stressed all this time. I've had all these issues with paying the mortgage, paying the bills, buying groceries, paying the electric bill, and all these things add up. And to me, the bankruptcy index is kind of an end game type indicator. We've seen all this stress building in the consumer stress legal index, and then even the what's the other one? The consumer finance index. Those are really leading indicators to the bankruptcy index. And we did see a slight drop in that index in the Q2 report that we just put out. But you've also got to remember, all the other months of this year, we've been reporting increase in the bankruptcy index. So really we saw a slight drop, but that was from a relatively, almost multi-year high.
Yeah, and you could potentially say someone's tax return or something saved them from bankruptcy or got them out of a jam that they're not going to get in Q3, 4, or even one.
Yeah,
And
and we
so,
do normally. So again, we've been running this index for, we've back built the data to 2002, and we've been running it live since 2018. And historically, we do see a drop in the bankruptcy index starting February, March, and kind of running through this May, June period. So we do, even though we've seen a month or two now of slightly, improvements in the bankruptcy index, we believe that, tax return Q2 low that we normally see, we believe that's about over. And all the data I'm looking at suggests that that index is going to continue to stay elevated and even rise.
yeah, I'm going to kind of leapfrog one of them, which is consumer finance, which we'll end on. But, also foreclosure is up, housing construction and housing sale was down. Talk a
Hey,
little
hold
bit
on.
about.
Are you completely skipping the foreclosure?
No, I was about to talk about foreclosure
Oh,
in
go
both
ahead.
housing and construction and sales, but with foreclosure comes a whole nother bit of legal issue because like you get foreclosed on, but you still owe, and that's a whole legal issue. But talk about like why foreclosure. Bankruptcy is the end game. Foreclosure is kind of a leading indicator until you may be looking at
Sure,
bankruptcy.
and maybe even foreclosure is more scary than bankruptcy, right? Because we've all have to have a place to live, and we're really seeing concerning increases in the foreclosure index. I mean, year over year, up 29%. And we put this out at the 1st of July, and I think on the 16th, yesterday or the day before, and I'm not even sure how to pronounce it, but it's ATTOM, atom.
Sure.
Anyway, they empowering innovation with property data. They're really the go-to folks that report on foreclosures. And yesterday, July 17th, it says Adam, a leading curator of land, property data, and real estate analytics, today released its mid-year 2025 U.S. foreclosure market report, which shows an increase in foreclosure filings, default notices, scheduled auctions, and bank repossessions for the first 6 months of 2025. So interesting to see. They put out their, mid-year Q2 report yesterday, and it's following exactly in line with what we're hearing from consumers all across the United States about they're concerned about these foreclosure related issues, and they're, reaching out to lawyers for help.
Yeah, and and I don't know where we want to mix consumer finance, but we also have housing construction and housing sales. But let's talk about with foreclosure because it kind of mixes in with consumer finance. But something we've been saying is you can't pay your house payment with a credit card anymore. And let's say maybe we save it for consumer finance. We'll talk about credit cards, but that's a big thing. Foreclosure's coming because you don't have enough cash to pay the mortgage because the mortgage company's not accepting the plastic anymore. They want fiat, hard, cold cash coming into
Well,
their
and then
system.
and also to, add insult to injury, and I think we talked about this a month or two back. Well, I mean, we're in full swing of student loan debt being recalled and repaid now. And that's, I mean, so if someone was financially stressed before and having trouble paying my bills, I can't make my mortgage, hell's bells. I've got a whole new bill on top of that. And guess what? If you're not paying your student loan, they're going to garnish you, they're going to take it out before you even get it. So to
Yeah,
me, especially when we talk about the consumer finance index, which again itself is, up almost 5 points month over month, quarterly up almost 10%. I can't help but believe that it's a lot of these issues. Folks are already stressed. We're going to go ahead and add that student loan debt back on top of it, and who knows what to do, right? And again,
yeah,
we're seeing kind of this revolving circus as folks now get deeper into the buy now, pay later um, financial products. How can you ever stay ahead, or how can you ever pay your bills if you're paying your bills with buy now, pay later, right? Or you're buying the groceries or paying the electric bill with a buy now, pay later, which is only becoming even easier to access.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a debt spiral that it's going to be impossible to get out of.
Yeah, I saw a podcast the other day where these guys were talking about, I think Klarna lost
Mhm.
millions by putting buy now, pay later on um DoorDash. It's like
Yeah, that's what
if you're DoorDashing and Klarna a $13 burrito,
that's
consumer
exact.
finance is a problem.
I read a story about some cat that was doing bean burritos at Taco Bell. I was like, I mean, it's funny, but that's a problem. If someone
Yeah.
even thinks that that's a way to pay for their DoorDash order, or that's a problem. Don't go to Taco Bell and buy now, pay later. I
But
mean, I mean, potentially you're going to be paying later, but not maybe not financially.
let's go ahead and stay in consumer finance because this is something me and you before we started got to talking about is like we see the big news outlets saying buying is strong. We see this administration saying buying is strong. The American people are out buying. No one needs to be afraid. But the reality is, and you say, yeah, in an article you wrote on the Leighton Lens, or sorry, yeah, on Leighton Lens, you talk about a consumer in the consumer finance index part, you say that legal shut inquiries track closely with the Federal Reserve data, so highlighting auto loan delinquencies reaching a decade high. So you're talking about this isn't just houses, this just isn't student loan. Car loans are also strapping people because it's all finance and all fake money. No one has the cash
Yeah,
to
no,
pay
hey, it's
anybody.
and we think about this a lot here, and I've been thinking about it and writing about it because there is a apparent discrepancy, right, between consumer spending is strong, consumer spending stays up, and then we're reporting that, consumer financial stress is rising, no one has any money, they can't pay their bills. And I don't necessarily think that those are contradictory. To me, that's a warning sign, right? Because again, when we talk about consumer spending, no one then follows up and says, how much of that spending is debt fueled, right? How much
Yeah.
of that is putting it on the credit? Absolutely, folks are spending, but I think Americans aren't necessarily spending more because they're financially comfortable, right? They're spending more because they can't afford not to, right?
Yeah.
Electric bills up, the grocery bills are up. I've got a car payment, I've got a mortgage payment. These things aren't easy. So, okay, just spend less. It's not easy to get out of a car note. It's not easy to get out of your mortgage payment. How much can you cut back on groceries, right? How hot does it have to be in the house? I mean, how far to the AC can I turn it?
Yeah.
Right? So it's like,
Yeah,
yes,
utility companies telling you set at
yeah,
78, but
consumer
their
spending
office is at
strong, but
65.
how much of that is debt spending? And I don't even have it, but folks are in the on the hamster wheel, and you just can't jump off mid turn.
Hey, and we talked about this in our Doge article, and we got some heat for this. We got some heat for that episode, but we actually mentioned this. The drawback to the Doge cuts could be this. You're cutting out aid that's going to jack consumer finance stress up because consumers can't pay for things you were giving someone $250 in groceries. Now she or he's got to put that on a credit card. I mean, I think that's what we're seeing.
It
Aid was
is.
cut, and now, yeah, buying's up because it's all on credit. No one has the cash. They didn't have the cash. That's why they were getting the help. And so, me and you talked about that. If people would have watched the episode and actually heard it and not go straight to thinking we were supporting Trump and Elon,
Right.
they would have heard the duality of consumer stress is going to go up because when aid's cut, we warned about this. People are going to have to go to credit because they
Yeah,
can't
and then
already
hey,
afford it.
and there's plenty of folks out there that just crazy with their spending. They're not financially smart, they're wasting money, but there's also a lot of people out there that aren't, and they're still having trouble making ends meet, right? And then as prices have continued to rise on basically everything, uh, there's nowhere left to cut, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and you've got to eat, and probably got to have the lights on. You got to have a car to get to work. You've got to
Yeah.
have a house.
What is it? Is it Darnell South, a friend of ours, used to say there used to be more month at the end of the paycheck than there was paycheck at the end of the month.
There you
And
go.
I think
More,
people,
there's more month at the end of the money.
yeah, like I think people are feeling that. And they are, they're turning towards credit cards. And I think you're right. I don't think those two indexes are contradictory.
Hey, you know what? And absolutely, it's nice to have credit and it's nice to be able to turn to those financial instruments when you need them, but it can't be constant, right? And you can't do it every single month because when do you ever start paying off the balance? Never. You just keep adding to it,
Yeah.
which again, we're kind of going way down a rabbit hole here, but I think there's lots of reasons why we're seeing the consumer legal stress index creep up, and a lot of these sub indices that underlie it, they're also continuing to creep up. And a lot of it's just the exact things we're talking about here. It's just consumer financial debt. It's hard to make ends meet. Things cost more than the money I've got, but you've got to go on living. How do you make the ends meet every single month when there's not money to do it?
Right. And let's be honest, the things we know that you have to have cash for are your house payment, your student loan payments, and you got to have cash for what else? That's about it. I mean, and so those two you highlight already, bankruptcy, foreclosure, and student loan. You talked about student loan. Those take cash. When those two take your all of your cash, you got to turn to credit. So it's not that the American people are choosing to, is that they have to because of the economy. And speaking of that, let's talk about one aspect of the American dream is owning a home is becoming more of the American fallacy of like you can't own a home, you can't build one, you can't own it. Land, we were talking about it last week. Land is around us is astronomically high. But you have in here the housing construction index uh, is up, housing sell. The both of them went down this last quarter, but are still up over last 8 years for construction, over last 14 years. So those predate COVID. Uh, did I say that wrong?
Yeah, you did, but that's all right. So first, let's talk about the housing construction index.
Lowest
So
reading, sorry, lowest level
yeah,
and lowest reading.
housing construction index tracks the housing starts, right? Housing permits, right? How many brand new houses are builders building? And we've seen that on kind of a down trajectory ever since we began raising the interest rates, right? Whenever we went from historically low, all-time low, zero almost interest rates. So we began raising the interest rates to combat the large inflation that we saw, and we began to see that housing construction index come down. But it's honestly continued to come down and hasn't stopped at the end of June in our Q2 report. Housing construction index has now fallen to its lowest level in more than 8 years, right? So
Yeah, that's what I meant to say.
yeah, it's I knew what
Instead
you were
of-
trying to say. So again, and this is a cycle or it's a circle all the way back up to our consumer stress legal index. If builders know that folks are having trouble with foreclosures are increasing, people are having trouble, consumer debt delinquencies are, at near all-time highs. How can I afford to build a block of brand new houses if I'm a builder, if I'm concerned that there's no one out there that can buy it, right? So
yeah.
we're continuing to see that construction index and activity come down, not even to mention all of the new tariffs that were been putting into place. Just we can talk about Canada and lumber, Mexico and drywall and sheetrock, right? Two of the major products you need to build a house. We're seeing 10, 15, 20% tariffs on those, which directly go to the cost and price of a brand new house.
Yeah, I saw this video the other day that said that Amazon is about to start putting an icon on every product that shows exactly how much that product increased due to the tariff, but on the country in which it was made, produced, and or sold from. And so they're going to be honest with the American people, like we don't want to sell it for $35. It would have sold for 28, but it's up $7 because of these tariffs. And so that's an interesting concept. And I want to piggyback off your comment of like builders used to buy 10 acres of land and build developments and then sell the houses. I got a buddy who used to do that, and now he changed his construction company to blah 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 custom homes. And I was like, why'd you change your company name? He goes, because now it's custom. I build one at a time because it's all people can afford. And I can't afford to keep a staff around of framers, roofers, and everyone else. He's like, so I'm legitimately moving from house to house. He's like, you'd be shocked how many times we'll get halfway through, financing dries up because they either lost their job or they went and were stupid, bought another car or something. And it's like the people don't realize that the banks only will lend so much. And comment to this, because you were doing this back, in the 08, 2010 collapse kind of stuff. You're talking about banks are starting to get nervous. And when bankers get nervous, the American people should be nervous. And
Yep, that's
so,
true. And I bet he's probably building those custom homes with, what, 25, 50% upfront payment, right? I've got
oh,
a
yeah.
contractor out working on a house now, and he wouldn't even put me on his schedule to start until I paid half of the bid.
Yep. Yeah, when Wes and I got our house remodeled, we knew the guy personally, have grown up around him, but he said, hey guys, I've got to have this much up front so I can buy supplies. And I need it now because if you wait a month or two, I can't guarantee you that bid amount because things are changing so quick that we'll
Yep.
be 20, 30% above what I said you were a month or two ago.
Yep. And hey, at the end of the day, builders are smart and they're feeling the same activity that we're talking about and seeing here in the data. And they're not going to keep building houses if they don't believe that there's a market for the purchase, right? But then we can go to the housing sales index, which is leading indicator for existing home sales, right? So again, these aren't brand new construction. These are existing homes that are on the market being sold. And that index, again, at the end of June, it's at its lowest reading in over 14 years. So kind of
Yeah.
all the way back to the 2010 after the, '08 financial crisis. So again, same reasons. Consumer financial stress is up. Folks are having trouble with foreclosures. They can't pay for the house they've got. How the heck are they going to buy a new one, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I know we're getting kind of close to time, but let's talk about the fact that you're starting to see things now that COVID is no longer the issue. You're starting to see numbers go into 2008, 2010, the big recession then. What are some of your comments around like, yeah, the pandemic affected us, but we're starting to see an American economy from 2008 to 2012 that was just atrocious and rates were high, people couldn't pay stuff. Do you think we're returning back to those days, or do you think that the signs are there that we could if things don't change quickly?
Yeah, hey, it's certainly going to be interesting, and it's a good point you brought up about all these impacts during COVID. The one big difference between then and now is that the government stepped in and bailed everyone out, right? We had rent moratoriums. You couldn't foreclose on people's houses. Student loans, just stop paying them. You don't have to. We helicoptered money out to everyone. So while it was absolutely a trying time for businesses and individuals getting laid off, there was a lot of help, right? And there was a lot of stopgap measures put in place. We're kind of moving back into some of those stressful, financial times now. And I don't think the government's going to come running to save and bail everyone out. So that's going to be interesting about what happens coming up, right? And again, I can only speak to what the data tells us. We're not seeing anything in the data that would suggest any of this is getting better anytime soon, right? We're continuing to see slow increases in those levels of financial stress. So it's going to be interesting going forward if anything changes to, right the ship, so to speak, or change the direction of the way that stress is going.
Yeah, great point. And so I don't know if you have anything else you want to share, but go check out the Consumer Stress Legal Index. We'll have the link down below in the description. Comes out every quarter. Matt's the author of it, but really, it's one of the voices that's saying things that is indicating where things could go and can help you see where the trends are actually being versus where the mainstream media wants to say things are going. So that's for me and for Matt. We'll catch you guys next time.